President Biden has been undoing many of the policies enacted by his predecessor, former President Donald Trump. One policy reversed earlier this week on criminal justice reform actually had support from both the left and the right. An executive order signed by President Trump in 2018 required agencies that issue regulations with criminal penalties to be clear about the conduct that would constitute a crime. Supporters say the measure ensured Americans would not violate laws unknowingly or unintentionally. Joining us now is John Malcolm, Vice President of the Institute for Constitutional Government and Director of the Edwin Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies at the Heritage Foundation. John, welcome back. Great to see you. So do we know why President Biden is revoking this executive action on criminal justice reform? Did he give any explanation?
No, he didn't. One slight correction, which is that President Trump signed this executive order called Protecting Americans from Overcriminalization Through Regulatory Reform in 2021. It was literally 2 days before he left office. And President Biden, who campaigned as a criminal justice reformer, rather surprisingly and disappointingly has revoked this executive order. So just to sort of paint a picture, there are about 5,000 federal laws that contain criminal penalties. There are hundreds of thousands of federal regulations scattered throughout the code of federal regulations that contain criminal penalties, and people can be prosecuted for them. What this executive order said was that any new criminal regulation that an executive agency would promulgate would have to specify precisely what conduct constitutes a crime and what mens rea requirement, what the intent element for that crime would be. It said that if an executive agency wants to create a strict liability offense, so one that requires no proof of an intent to harm anybody, that would require additional review within the White House. And it also said that strict liability crimes are generally disfavored, and that if a prosecutor wants to use a strict liability crime, that they should, first of all, consider pursuing administrative and civil penalties instead of criminal penalties, and should only pursue criminal penalties under unusually compelling circumstances or where there was clear evidence that somebody intended to violate the law. I do not know why President Biden revoked this eminently sensible executive order that's supported by lots of groups on both the right and the left.
John, can you give us maybe some examples of people who were unknowingly performing criminal acts and then suffered the consequences?
Sure. So, there are the federal code, and the federal code of federal regulation is chock-a-block with all kinds of technical violations, some of which, if you commit them, even if you have no intent to violate the law and no knowledge that such a law exists, you are committing crimes. Now, if you're in a heavily regulated industry and as a condition of getting a license, you're informed about these laws, okay. But these regulations, criminal regulations, can often prove to be traps for the unwary. And it's small mom and pop businesses and individuals who totally unwittingly, without any intent to harm anybody, any intent to violate the law, can end up doing something that in fact is a crime.
And what do you think happens going forward with this?
Well, now agencies have a green light to promulgate additional criminal regulations, including strict liability regulations, where if you commit certain conduct, you have committed a crime, whether you knew about the law or had any intent to harm anybody. Not all of these criminal regulations are self-evident. People who commit these acts wouldn't necessarily know that they're doing something that would put somebody in harm's way or doing something that was morally blameworthy in some way. And prosecutors will be free to pursue criminal prosecutions against people who commit those sorts of acts rather than pursuing civil or administrative remedies. And people will end up getting branded as criminals for doing acts that, would not have been obvious to the average person would constitute crimes.
Well, John Malcolm of the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Good to be with you.